Well, while we wait for him, there was two main agenda topics I wanted to cover today. Things are kind of quiet at the end of the year, but there were two things. One of them was the maintainers updating the projects and what's happening there with the stick shifter recruiting, and if they've had any success, um, and if they want, is there anything that should be done about that? I'm actually potentially going to volunteer someone from Symbian to come in and help with that. So I wanted to talk with Jacques about that, but I also wanted to kind of go over the other projects. He sent me a list. I was like, "Can you send me the current maintainer status of all the projects?" And and we have one maintainer for a couple of them. So like, I don't know if we should probably be kind of like recruiting not just for one project but for multiple. Um, so that was one conversation.
Or putting the projects into maintenance mode or archive mode or whatever the right word is.
Well, that's an interesting discussion about, what should we do with the PACE project, right?
Yep.
Because it's kind of been sitting around. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm the only one who cares, and if I'm the only one who cares, I'm not going to do it all. So
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like if we don't have any supporting vendors or anything, it's just kind of like stagnating. OXA, we have a little bit of that challenge as well, but I do know, David is they are doing stuff. I mean, I actually saw him posting about it on LinkedIn, and like, so, he's still there. They're still trying hard. So I'm not as concerned with OXA as I am with Pace, about what we're doing there. Are we going to do anything? And then interestingly, it seems like every time, we had a zero trust thing, and then all of a sudden it descends into maintenance mode, somebody once again brings up zero trust. And that's what's happened, right? So we have this PACE project, which has been sitting kind of stagnant for a long time. And then all of a sudden, Carol, and I don't know if you know anything about this, Kelly, but Carol was there was discussion um about some new zero trust initiative, some new zero trust thing happening in the EU or something like that. Or maybe it was Jim, maybe it wasn't Carol. Yeah, it was Jim.
Oh
Jim
yeah,
was
that
talking
was
about.
Jim. Yeah, that was a result from the NATO meeting we were at a few weeks ago. It was some part of the
Z,
the the
Z,
British
Z-
MOD.
yeah,
Yeah,
ZTDF. You
yeah,
were
yeah.
at that meeting, right?
I was, yeah. Mhm.
Um, so Jim, we had a conversation, and he was telling me a little bit about it. But since you were there as well, maybe you can give the PGB here a little bit of background on this ZDTF. And Jim, he did so at the PGB meeting last month in November. He did give Vaughn and I an update, but
Yeah.
Duncan was not there.
Un-
Might be worth you kind of replaying that.
Unfortunately, I don't know much. It was a 2-day meeting, and this presentation and conversation happened the day I wasn't there.
Oh,
So a lot of what I've heard is from Jim. I did meet with the guy briefly in the hallway just to kind of, shake hands, introduce. The only thing that I really took away from what he had said to me was that they're really looking for a space to prove out some of what they've developed. I guess they were on a somewhat tight timeline where they had to prove to their client, which I assume was the government, the UK government, some of these things playing out in real life. But unfortunately, I don't have a ton on the project. Like I said, that was the day I wasn't there. But I could ask Jim to write up a brief and we could set it to the mailing list if that would be helpful.
it probably would, because I think the main thing that I'm trying to figure out is if there's a there. Like, is
Yeah.
there anything we should, because OCA, we need to make a decision on pace. And like Duncan says, it's just kind of sitting around, and Duncan's not going to do all the work. But if there's some folks at NATO that want to start break, so Duncan, the ZTDF, it's some kind of a RBAC framework that they use inside NATO for zero trust data enforcement.
Yeah,
Um, it's not
I
public, so you can't go and see what it is, but they want to open it up. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So I can probably shed a bit of light on it because I took a bit of an interest in this and I did a bit of scratching around. There's not a lot of information available on the open internet about it because I think it's been while it's I think unclassified, it's still an internal NATO project and they've sort of kept it between members. But essentially, they've got this format, and I think it was ABAC rather than RBAC, and that's what piqued my interest because I've got quite a big interest in ABAC, and it's a basically an open data format for or an open schema for labeling data, so that they can share, you know, NATO classified data between each other. And the challenge they were having is they just don't have any commercial support for it. So they can build government tooling, but if the commercial sector doesn't know how it works, then they can't really build against that spec. And so what they were, or I think what was relayed to us, this is obviously coming secondhand, is that they wanted to put this spec into somewhere in the commons, where it becomes a community project so that commercial vendors would be more likely to build against it and provide solutions that support that schema. You're on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's worth perhaps having a conversation. The challenge, like, I always get a little bit wary of these projects though that kind of come in and they sound like, oh, we can't get commercial vendors to support this, so we're going to bring it into Oasis and expect that to somehow magically solve the problem, because it won't, unless there's some kind of,
Unless it really solves a real problem.
it has to solve a real problem, and then there has to be one of two things attached. There has to be funding attached to it to support it, and or some type of government procurement
Right.
contract vehicle that forces vendors to care. Because if,
Right.
something can be the best thing since sliced bread, but if there's no market function forcing the vendors to care, they won't care. That so that's the thing we just need to be watching out for. Now, if maybe they have that all in order, I don't know.
Well, but they got to release it. Well, either Oasis has to talk them into making it an Oasis project, or they have to release it somewhere we can read it. But there's no way commercial will ever do it if they're not allowed to read it.
Yeah, so they are interested in making this an Oasis project, Duncan. And the question is it a TC, or does it line up with OCA into PACE or a new vehicle
Or
or something?
did anyone look as to whether it lines up with NEAM? Because isn't that exactly, those words are identical to what NEAM is, right?
I mean, Jim is the Mr. Neem, so I would assume he'd be looking at that. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, so while I don't have a ton of information on the zero trust, I do want to kind of level set that there are two potential projects coming in to Oasis from NATO. One, the zero trust one is a little bit more specific, but then there's also two other standards whose names escape me. I'd have to pull them up, that they are talking about bringing into Oasis as a technical committee. So there's kind of two different projects here, not one, if that's helpful for this conversation.
I think it helps. Like, I'm trying to do is figure out what are we doing with PACE. That's the end of the day. Is it still alive? Is it a zombie? Do we, because the original, it's gone through mothball and rebirth now kind of more than once, actually. Before PACE, it was called something else.
Right.
And
Although I'll argue it was something else too. It sort of got reinvigorated in a new form because of the supply chain work. I thought it would be a slam dunk for the supply chain stuff. But again, if the vendors don't care, because right now the vendors are off, all said and done, the vendors are off doing proprietary interfaces that no one else can talk to, which is not in the user's best interest. So we really do need a standard there. It's just the users aren't asking for it, and the vendors aren't working on it, so therefore I'm the only person who thinks that. I think it'll eventually come, but unfortunately it'll be too late by then.
There is some work going on for an SBOM interchange standard at somebody. I can't remember who it is, but it's only for SBOM. It's not for all the other things that Pace is looking at posture.
Yeah, Pace is supposedly going to do everything in cybersecurity, but at least from supply chain, OSIM is also looking at it, and that might reinvigorate it if OSIM takes off. But again, that's probably down the pike a ways. So yeah, I would argue we keep it mothballed in whatever the mothball state is, unless something like zero trust data format. I just looked it up. I didn't even know what your initial stood for, or the OSIM work or something else reinvigorates it, or the market says, "Hey, by the way, this is stupid that these boxes don't talk to each other."
All right. The next agenda, I'm trying to make sure. So I do have a hard stop at 4:30. Everybody else can continue though. Vaughn's here and we can keep going, but I'm gonna have to leave at 4:30. The No, I'd agree. Let's take that action. Well, the action of no action for now. And we'll also try to, I do think it'd be helpful, Kelly, to just get status update on that for Jim, because it has been about a month, and I don't know, if he can send an email to the co-chairs maybe, or the PGB on
Yeah,
it.
definitely. I just peeked at his calendar. He is in meetings the rest of today, but I will follow up with him and see what he's comfortable putting in putting an email. If it's maybe not to the full list, maybe it's like you said, to the chairs, and you guys can kind of disseminate it out. Yes, I will follow up with Jim.
Okay. So the second item I wanted to cover, Jacques, thank you for joining, is the maintainers and status there. So you gave me an update on Slack about the current maintainers of the projects and where we have gaps. Did you want to just kind of relay that to everybody else now, or do you want me to read it out?
Sure. Okay. So currently, 4 projects at OCA are active, and we have people from the first 4 projects meeting every month. And for the TSC meeting, and we've discussed a few topics, and we have progress on things. The 4 projects are Stick Shifter currently in a state that we do not have new updates, but the maintainer, Derek, is from IBM, is still there waiting for us to seek for another maintainer, that's Stick Shifter. Castro, currently I'm the maintainer for that. IOB, Charles is there, very active, and also connects a lot of projects through the village. And then the cacao roaster, Matrios is there. And usually Claudia will join us and help us on the administrative task. And so those are the 4 active projects currently. For the last maybe 4 or 5 months, 4 of us, we meet every time. And the 2 inactive projects currently are Pace. We need a new maintainer or the person who can give some guidance for the next part of phase, next kind of milestone for phase, and also OXA. I think we need to maybe to get a little bit more active on the OXA side. So this is about the current kind of a project activity thing, and in the last few months, we finally finalized the OCA repository guideline for projects. And we discussed it for almost more than a year. And then we put a lot of items in Google Doc and finally converted to GitHub, README file, the Markdown files. And then Claudia helped us to clean the documentation repository at OCA GitHub. And then now the documentation, most of the previous kind of version of documentation repository is kind of archived as a branch in that repository. And the new main branch is nearly starting empty with the OCA project guideline. So all the projects, the one thing I want to just give a little bit idea. The guideline give shed lights on what the project should look like when they were first admitted to OCA or first started by some of the existing projects, what's a report when a repository was started, there is a 6 months incubation time or initial time for the project to have very initial things like keywords in the repository panel, some README files, very informal and things. And after 6 months, we will have the standard repository requirements and things that we list a lot of them there. And so this is a period that the project should have a better chance to be seen by the public and then to be more attractive to the users and to the developers and things. And beyond the initial phase and the standard phase of the guideline, we have advanced topics that can be, those are optional, will help the repository to look better, to be better organized, but are not enforced. So basically, we kind of categorize all the requirements in the 3 categories. And then this is how we kind of decide it. And we have a lot of discussions within all the projects, especially the 4 active ones. Previously, we also have people from OXA that joining the discussion. And so that's how we kind of shape the draft and in this state like this. Yeah.
So I think Duncan's got a good request in there. You know, we should probably, the TSC should probably send in an email to kind of actually everyone in the OCA saying, hey, here's our new repository guidelines. You know, that's a really good update. We should spread knowledge of that.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good thing. And most importantly, because this is a TSC discussion, and TSC has one maintainer from the leader maintainer from each of the projects. So all the projects are pretty communicated and from the kind of a leader maintainer point of view. So we agree this is a good guideline that we will follow. So that's a very important thing for TSC to decide, because we need to make sure all the projects, they agree that this is kind of something, because no one wants to write documentation from the beginning, and but we need a good documentation. So we need a kind of agreement from everyone that everyone needs to put a little bit effort here to meet these standards to make things look good. Yeah. Okay. Sure. I will send out the email maybe. Yeah.
Duncan, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was going to say, do send out the email though, because just because the maintainer knows doesn't mean they bothered to tell everybody else. Like, I didn't know it was there.
Yeah. I see.
I didn't read the emails, but yeah, so do send it to everybody. The other question is just what are OCA projects and what aren't OCA projects? So CASP is, I don't think CASP was on the list of 4 you said, but it is an active project. And it does have a repo. But I don't know that we send anybody to the meeting. So that's one question. And then what about Patrick's interoperability village thing? Is that a project or not? And then what about, like, didn't we have a zero trust group, and didn't we have something to do with ontologies or something? Are those exist or don't exist? And exactly the state of our projects is a little confusing at times.
Right. So for ontology, I think it is inactive for some time.
Yeah.
And sorry, I missed the CASP part. I think we really need one representative, maybe you. I'm not sure who will be the best representative for CASP to join TSC. I think it will be very helpful. So from time to time, we mostly have Charles as kind of as the bridge to give us feedback or give us kind of updates for the CASP project. But I think it's a good idea, or it's a better idea to have someone that's from CASP directly that joining TSC officially, so that we can have the meetup every week or every month about the kind of progress and things, and what things others can help. And yeah.
Well, we just had a meeting this morning, so I couldn't bring it up at this morning's meeting or actually it was even this afternoon, a couple hours ago. But I will try to remember to bring it up at the next meeting. That we'll send you somebody.
Okay, that will be fantastic. Okay. Yeah. So I think CASP.
And what about Patrick's project? Is that, I mean, I guess a question to Vaughn and Jason. Didn't we accept that as a project?
We're gonna have to, we did.
He just doesn't have any money, but he still has a repo and he could be the maintainer, right?
He still has a mandate. Yeah, I believe there's a repo. We need to go and check on that. It would be good to get an update from Patrick. Like I kind of know what's going on. It's just kind of like again another thing that's like stalled and
Well, no, but he does have somebody on the hook now, although apparently they haven't totally coughed up yet. But in any case, he has a repo and he probably doesn't know about these guidelines you just mentioned. And given he's just starting, now would be the time to
Oh,
do it.
that's great news. I mean, this is a good example then, we don't know what we don't know, right? So that's why we gotta have the coordination. So,
And again, he said people on the hook before and they've fallen through, but at least it seems like in my reading of 2 meetings ago, I wasn't at it, but 2 meetings ago, cast notes was some company, I'd forget, I have to look which, did volunteer to do something. So
so I'm gonna have to go in a second to go pick up my daughter, but you guys can continue on. One quick question, Jalquay, before I go. Simeon, like I'm pretty sure, so we're ready to volunteer someone for stick shifter. Um, do we also want to discuss like that person, are you seeking a second, I believe we should be seeking a second maintainer for Kestrel. I think it's good to have two.
Yes,
I
I think that's a good proposal. Yeah.
because we would be willing to do that. So obviously this isn't an anointment process, that we have a process for maintainers. So what I think what we need to do is go through the process and governance. I know the maintainers are appointed at like the pleasure of the PGB, but like we need to send out some emails, I think, and say um I like essentially I have to nominate. I'll nominate an individual, then people can second it.
So
and ideally, Jason, have them work on it a little bit as a
yeah,
final person before they're a maintainer, as opposed to
right.
it just looks
Yeah,
better.
we need to work, we can work through that. So I think what we need to do is talk with Derek. So what's kind of interesting is we actually do have a whole bunch of code in a private branch already. So we need to talk to Derek and figure out how to start making that not private.
Right, and make the person who actually does the commits be the person you're gonna propose to be maintainer, because then it looks good, because it looks like they've contributed.
Correct.
Even if it wasn't the original person.
Correct. So that, we'll have to work through that process, but I just wanted to break that news.
Yep, and I think it's always a kind of an issue for many open source projects to kind of keep up with maintainers. So I think when we have an opportunity, we should always prepare ourselves for finding new maintainers for projects. That is something usually I hear it from a lot of open source projects. That's because people have been distracted, because people have a lot of other things. So it's always, I think it's good to have at least 2 maintainers for project. And so that even one maintainer may be on vacation, another one can approve PRs and do things. And so that's always needed. Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah, having done it for lots of
I really
projects.
I have to leave, but you guys can continue on. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Vaughn, you're up.
Right, yeah, I don't have anything else to add to this particular conversation. I haven't been tracking the maintainer issue too closely, but it sounds like we have some next steps.
And
Yeah, for the okay, please.
And there's sort of 2 issues that we have to be careful to not over confound them together. One is having the maintainers and just having them do it. And the second is having a representative on the TSC, which is the job of one of the maintainers. if we have enough trouble getting maintainers to begin with, if we then overburden them with being on the TSC, we should sort of just be careful to keep them separate so that we get as many volunteers as we want.
Yeah, certainly makes sense. Yeah, share the burden around. Yeah. So Xiaokui, is there anything else we need to take into account going forward in terms of making sure Stick Shifter has appropriate maintenance going into the future?
Yes, just want to get everyone aware that currently we are on the hook of finding a maintainer for Stick Shifter. IBM find it very hard to put more effort into Stick Shifter, which means we have Derek currently from IBM who is a maintainer of Stick Shifter, but we really need to find another maintainer to keep the work going. And Derek is very, very friendly, and he is willing to give time to maybe guide the new person to be on board, and some of the ideas about technically or non-technical things. He will be very helpful, but we really need to jumpstart a new maintainer to make sure that the project will be going on. Yeah.
Right.
I
And would
think
you
I
say
heard
there
Jason volunteer someone, so you probably just need to follow up with Jason and make sure he coughs up the actual person.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's good that he mentioned he already have people in mind that who would like to contribute and who would like to take the responsibility to be the maintainer. Actually, I think 2 months ago, we post a blog on the OCA blogs seeking maintainers for Stick Shifter. That's yeah, but it's good to hear that what Jason said. I will follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, Xiaokui, is there anyone other than Symbian? Are there any other companies or individuals that have either contributed a lot to the project or are heavy users of the project that you know of that could also be candidates as maintainers?
We are not aware of anyone who is heavily using the project, so that's a challenge. And even people may use it, they may not be that public using it. And sometimes we see people submitting issues, even PRs, but most people just come and go. And we do not see a consistent pattern of someone is consistently contributing things. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's got 234 stars, so and
Right.
34 people
and,
are watching
and
it,
also,
so someone's using it.
Yeah, as Jason mentioned, there are a lot of private use, and the code they may privately fork and do development afterwards that they may never push it back or something like that. So that's why we post a blog post to kind of let people know that if they are willing to contribute back, that's good. That we are welcome. Kind of a new contributors and maintainers, and we have a procedure to get them familiar and on board. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it looks like it's got 232 forks as well, so yeah.
It's a lot of forks. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Well, I think the sort of the end vendor community that makes use of it to convert their stuff into sticks is a beneficiary of it that doesn't maybe we need to somehow suck them into contributing back more, but I don't know how to do that.
I think I suppose where it starts is if you make a fork so that you can modify it for your own purposes, but now you have to maintain that fork as the main repo gets updated. Then at some point you might think it's just less difficult if we just contribute our changes back into the common code, so that we don't have to maintain a separate fork. And then I think from there you can gradually get people to contribute as maintainers. But I'm not sure that anyone is. It sounds like there's no one who's prolific enough that they would consider taking on the main project.
Yeah, because the problem is I think the edge people that are getting converted just need to sort of do their thing once. Once they do it, it converts it to, the fix is not in that largest state of change. The stick shifter isn't in that largest state of change. And it works, so they use it and go off and don't need to, do anything more. So I don't know. Now there is some sticks 3.0 work eventually coming down the pike. It might be we'll get another spike at that point that we can then suck more people back in. But right now it sort of is what it is.
Yep. All right. Okay, and yeah, moving on to, I think Vasilios. I know you're in the middle of some other activities right now because of the time of day where you are, but just wondering if you are able to speak on the call, if you could give us an update on where Roaster is at.
Yes. Hello. It's
Yeah, hi.
my dinner activity basically. So I'll
Yep,
join you while I'm having my dinner.
no worries.
Yeah. So it will take a few more days until we have this pull request. Things happen, so I had to assign Mateus to finish some other tasks that had to be prioritized. Nevertheless, I don't know, it will take a week, maybe less than a week, but more or less we are done. But he still needs to document things, take the list of changes, what has been fixed. So we are very near. We are very near. So I cannot say that it's going to be early next week, but I mean, realistically speaking, right? So I cannot make like strange promises. Before the end of the year, we should have the new version of the roster published.
Great. That's not long to
Yeah,
wait. Very exciting.
yeah.
And I know it's probably some time away, but excuse me. What do you know about Cacao 3.0 and how that's coming along, and how
Ah,
Roaster might support that?
so I don't have a clear answer. I mean, from an engineering perspective, since the roster is just, let's call it a front-end application and allows you to generate Cacao playbooks, it's not going to be too challenging to modify the application. I mean, you would have serious issues if you had a, orchestrator, right, for the solution, basically. I cannot promise that we will have the resources immediately to basically commit to update the roster to version 3.0. But I think it will be doable because roster is utilized and we have promised to be utilized in some European projects and some upcoming proposals that we have submitted. So as long as one of these projects is granted, then we'll have enough resources to invest to update the software. So I'm very optimistic. Yeah. So as
Got
long
it.
as we have some resources, we're going to do it. It's not going to take too long, but we still need to have some kind of budget and and justify the expense. So yeah.
Yeah, understood. And I would assume that a prerequisite for this activity would be to update the schema, the Cacao schema to 3.0. Is that
Yes, I mean that could be something seamless, more or less. So I think that we could do, without resources, let's say, so without a substantial budget supporting us. So this we can do. The JSON validation schemas can always be updated, but the user interface itself, it requires days of engineering. Not too many,
right?
but maybe a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Okay. And do you know when the 3.0 spec will be publicly released so that the work on the schema can begin?
So we are pushing forward. So we're pushing hard. So again, I cannot be clear, but 1, 2 months, something like this. I mean,
Okay.
there are some open issues, but these issues, even though they are like only a few, they require like lengthy discussions during the meeting. So um, knowing also that now we have more frequent meetings, it should not take more than that. Nevertheless, when we are ready, if it is, let's say, 1.5 months or 2 months that, we have like a final draft specification, this needs to go through the whole OASIS process to issue a committee specification. Yeah.
Got it.
We can work, of
Okay.
course, on updating the schemas, right? We are part of the committee, right? So, I mean, we know when is the right time to update the schemas. So it doesn't mean that we need to wait until we have a committee specification. We already know that, this is it. And then we push forward regarding the process. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, based on everything you've said, my understanding is new version of Roaster being released before the end of December.
Yes.
Then probably around late January, we might have a new 3.0 schema for Cacao, and then sometime after that, Roaster will support 3.0 as well.
That is the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For the first 2 points, I think we are more or less accurate. For the third one, we'll need to rely on funding that I believe that we are going to get. So it should be doable. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. And okay, and on a related topic, yeah, CASP. Duncan, any updates on CASP that are worth sharing in this forum? You're on mute, Duncan.
Probably do hear me better when I unmute. So not sure when you last got updated. I know I've been out of touch for a while just because the meeting async with other stuff I had. But so maybe or maybe you don't know that the both host and dates have changed since they used to be AT&T in January or February. They're now I'm drawing a blank on their name. Same one who hosted it
I think
last.
is it Peraton?
Peraton. Just couldn't remember the name Peraton,
Yeah.
so I blanked for a second.
Yeah, no,
Peraton,
I literally read the notes just before this meeting. Peraton, something like the first 3 days of April.
Yes, I think it's April 2nd, 3rd, 4th, but it's early on in April. They're hosting. People are working. There's another meet. There was a meeting today. There's another meeting next Thursday. Then we're breaking for a bit, and then meet twice in January, twice in February, and twice in March before the village. But sort of prepping for the village is the big thing. The Volt Typhoon is the main focus, with maybe some Salt Typhoon stuff thrown in. Some arguments going on whether to do a second, more crime ransomware oriented use case. Jane Ginn had suggested one. I'm actually for doing that, not because it adds more TTPs, because this one didn't, but more for the, I'll say, awareness and adoption, because you want, all said and done, the Govy people care about nation state attacks. Most companies don't. So even when they should. So the sort of, more attention getting things like ransomware, I think would be useful. So they're gonna relook at, try and have our cake and eat it too, and find a different criminal gang than the one they were proposing, that introduced some new TTPs, so it looked good to both the threat actor and IOB crowd, but also to just so we can have some ransomware stuff from a sales and, I'll call it sales and marketing viewpoint. And Patrick wasn't on the call today, but from the notes, my understanding is there is a particular company that is going to volunteer, not necessarily to host everybody's infrastructure, but it's going to throw some infrastructure of their own in there, which is good. And other than that, people just reported on the various things they're doing to get ready for it. So so we'll dive in earnest probably in January, but things seem to be proceeding. I think it would have been good if AT&T could have hosted, but I think it would have been challenging if we would have kept those dates. So I think the fact it's the later date does actually help us. So
Okay, cool. And have you heard anything from the IOB project?
They were not actually at this one, but they've been at several of the last ones, and that they've sort of, I'll say for lack of a better term, been driving the particular use case and the Volt Typhoon stuff. One just sort of interesting tidbit in a sort of related note is CISA did report at not at today's meeting, but last meeting, somewhat on the Volt Typhoon, and there's at least talk of, we don't know if we can pull it off, getting one of the CISA China experts to actually be one of the speakers at the village on the quote Chinese threat. I know I heard a very interesting unclass talk at the NSA at a NSA conference a month or two ago, where basically the US government's opening up a little bit more about bad things going on and being more pointed, I'll say, in their accusations of other countries as relations deteriorate. So the good news of relations deteriorating is the U.S. intelligence community actually opens up and says some things for once. So that's actually good. So the hope is they'll get the CISA person to do that at the village. But that all came about because of the Johns Hopkins work on the Volt Typhoon indicators related with the China stuff. So they have been very active there. They're working with the Kestrel crowd to trigger all the stuff. They're working with HII to make use of the OpenC2 stuff in it. So that all, again, it's early days yet because it's still months away, but that all seems to be going well.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I think things are certainly going further in that direction. I'm not sure where you'd begin with Salt Typhoon, I'll be honest. It feels like there's just single action, which is use encryption. If you are using a telco, encrypt your traffic. End of story. I don't know. All right,
I think if you get into some of the details, it's a little fancier than that, but
okay, right, yeah. It just seems to be just overwhelming. Yeah.
But it is true that if you use technologies, so I went to work at Bell Labs in 1978, and C7 was already a standard, and we were using it. When I got involved in cyber after the first Gulf War, I went back to AT&T and said, "Hey, we got to worry about this stuff." I will admit, C7 and BGP were the top of my list of, hey, they were old. In 1990, they were old and needed to be, and we're still using them. So it's not exactly a super shock that you can attack them. But
yeah, I mean we've got manners now, so if people are rolling out manners and like doing that, and also patching your Cisco devices apparently is
yeah.
something you should be doing.
Well, patching in general is a solution, but also a problem, clearly, because we somehow still don't do it.
Yep. Okay,
Which
and
brings us back to the pace argument that if we did have pace and did it correctly, we could actually make the correct business decisions to maybe we would do it. But that's water over the dam.
I think, Duncan, you should be appointed to high office to oversee all this. But yeah,
certainly not in today's environment. You
no.
couldn't.
All right, and just for completeness, circling back on Kestrel, is there anyone have any notable developments on Kestrel or things we need to be aware of? Nope. Okay. I don't think so. All right. Yeah, I guess we're 10 minutes from the top of the hour. Noting that Jason has dropped off already. Are there any more for any more? No.
Other than everybody have a happy holidays and a happy new year.
Thanks, Duncan. Yeah. Likewise. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, at this point, I guess we'll adjourn the meeting. And thanks everyone for coming. And probably see you all in the new year.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Happy holidays.